Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's lesson. Let's go over today's lesson objective. So, today we will explore how the sun affects the water cycle and weather pattern. So, today we're going to be talking a lot about the sun and weather. All right, let's go ahead before we dive into our lesson. Let's go over our lesson success criteria. So, we have 3 for this lesson. So, the first lesson success criteria is that I can identify what starts the water cycle. The second lesson success criteria is I can identify how salt water in the ocean gets separated. And finally, our third success criteria is I can identify where most of the water on Earth evaporates from. So if we can identify all of these things, and we have mastered this lesson. We have shown that we've gotten those skills, and that we are successful with this lesson. All right, let's go ahead and go into our vocabulary. So the first thing is weather. What is weather? So weather is the current outdoor condition. So weather is anything that we can see right now. So if I go outside, I can see that it's sunny. I can see that it's rainy. I can see that it's snowing. So weather is whatever we can see right now, either in our own location, or if I were to see a video from China, I would be able to know what the current weather is right now. All right, now let's go over what is the water cycle. Now, we've reviewed this a few times before with me, and then also in previous grades, but let's go ahead and do another review. So the water cycle is the constant movement of water through the land, air, oceans, and living things. So that's what the water cycle is. So right over here, we'll see a pool of water. It's going to go ahead and rise up, go into our clouds, and then it's going to fall back down to earth again. And then it'll just kind of repeat. So the water cycle is just the constant movement of water throughout the earth. Okay? All right. Now, let's go ahead and dive into our lesson. So the first thing we need to remember about with the water cycle is that the sun provides energy that evaporates the water from the earth. So the sun is essentially the beginning of the water cycle, or it is the beginning of the water cycle, right? So what the sun is doing is the sun is transferring heat down onto the earth, down into the water. And so what the sun is essentially doing is it is heating up water on Earth. It's heating up our oceans, our rivers, our lakes. So our water is getting heated up by the Earth's energy, right? Then from there, and it might not be drastic, we probably don't even see it. It's happening all the time. We'll have our water evaporate, or that is when liquid water, turns into gas. So it evaporates and it goes up into the sky. From there, all of our water particles, all of that water vapor is going to condense, or it's going to come together, and it's actually going to form clouds in the sky, right? So really all the clouds really are is just a bunch of water. That's all it is up there, just a bunch of water vapor. So when it gets up into the air, it's going to start getting colder, and then it's going to turn into clouds. From there, all this water is going to keep collecting, and then it's going to go ahead and fall back down to the earth, either as rain or as snow, sleet, hail, in some form of water. It could either be solid water like hail, like ice, or it could be liquid water like rain. So that process is called precipitation, where water falls from the sky. So it's going to precipitate down into the earth. And then from there, that water is going to collect into rivers and streams and lakes, and then that whole process is going to start again. That is our water cycle on Earth. But the whole thing starts with the sun heating up water on our Earth. If we didn't have the sun to heat up water, we wouldn't have any weather. We wouldn't have rain. We wouldn't have snow. We wouldn't have hail. We wouldn't have any of that, because we need the sun to start the evaporation process on Earth. Okay, now we've kind of gone into that. Now let's look at the places that water collects, right? So we said before, water collects in rivers and oceans and lakes, puddles, a bunch of different places. But the place that the most water collects is going to be in our oceans, because 71% of the Earth's surface is covered in ocean. Most of the Earth is covered in ocean. So if we look at our map right here, all of this blue is ocean. We have 5 oceans in the world: Atlantic, Pacific, Indian, Arctic, and Southern, and it covers most of the surface of Earth. It covers more space than continents. So most of our water is going to be evaporated from the ocean. That's where most of the evaporation happens, is from the ocean, because 71% of the Earth is covered in ocean. So that is where most of our water is evaporating from. Okay, now the sun is what starts the water cycle, like we said before. And this can actually lead to a bunch of different things. So because the sun heats and starts the water cycle, it leads to rain. It leads to snow. In extreme cases, it could lead to flooding, like when there is extreme heat from the sun. It could actually, we saw this a couple years ago called El Nino, where it was a really big storm, maybe a little more than a couple years ago, but it was a really big storm, which led to a lot of flooding because there was so much water that was getting evaporated into the air. And then it was collecting really quickly in clouds that it caused a bunch of rain. It caused a bunch of flooding. And that actually was due to, it started with the Earth's heat. And then in other extreme cases, if we have a lot of water that is evaporating and it's not being collected and condensating, if it's getting heated up too quickly, and we are not getting rain, that could lead to drought. So a lot of our weather, all of our weather, starts with the sun's heat in the beginning of the water cycle. So the sun's heat starts a lot of these processes and more. Okay, now let's go into what gets evaporated in water. So water that evaporates from the ocean does not contain salt, but our oceans contain salt. So there is water from ponds, lakes, rivers, and streams. Those are all fresh water, which means there's no salt in that water. It's just fresh water. There's no salt. It is it's just pure water. However, water in the oceans contain about 3 to 4 percent salt, and it's considered salt water. So that is a solution of salt in water. Now, salt can be separated from heat, from evaporation. So if we were to, or salt water can be separated from evaporation. So if I were to make a mixture of salt and water mixed together really, really well, so you don't see, so they're evenly distributed, and then I were to put it on a stove and heat that water, the water would evaporate away, but the salt would stay behind. The same thing is happening with our oceans. Our water is evaporating away, but the salt is staying behind in the ocean, right? So only the water is evaporating away in the water cycle and from heating from the sun. All right. Let's go ahead and go over what our lesson objective was for today. So today we explored how the sun affects the water cycle and the weather patterns on Earth, right? So the sun is pretty important for a lot of things that happen on Earth. All right, well, I hope this was helpful. Make sure you review your lesson success criteria, and I'll see you next time. Bye, guys.